what happened when you first came here.
You're going to start that way?
Sure. Go ahead.
Well, look, how long is this?
Well, we have plenty of time, but
You got 50 years you're leading into now.
Yeah, I know.
Start that.
No, you're right. I know. I understand. I know a little of
It's
it.
a long story. You don't know what you're getting.
Have you got a drink? Let me sit down. I watched the Aurora Borealis in the front yard of your house last week. We were driving by your house, and it was amazing, right? All right, well, we'll make this simple. Just tell me who you are and what you do, and we'll go from there.
You mean my name?
Yes, please. I'm Bob Atwood. I know I'm
This
not.
This is first prize for how you don't interview somebody in all the books I read about
that's
interviewing.
Right. I'm not an interviewer, but it'll work out, trust me.
I'm Bob Atwood, the president and publisher of the Anchorage Times.
How did you get to be the publisher of the Anchorage Times? How did you get here to Alaska?
I bought it.
Were you in that business and you came here to? Why would you come here? Is what I guess I'm asking.
For a bit of adventure.
Ah. You came to Alaska as an adventure?
Yes, I was a newspaper reporter in larger cities and moving around in newspapers, and I had an opportunity to buy this paper, and I guess every...
Now we're back on. A lot of people, you came up here at the same time, a lot of key people who built the state, really, in effect, came up here. What did they have in common? I mean, they're the pioneers of Alaska. What is it that they're today's pioneers, the people who came up in the 30s and 40s and 50s and made it happen. What do you think's the common bond between them all?
Well, I'd say that's just that spark of adventure, looking for something different, wanting to go and do something, make a place for yourself, a new place and a niche in a new part of the world. And that probably is the distinguishing characteristic of the people of Alaska. Most of the adults today have come here from some distant place. And they're here by choice, not by chance of birth or something else. And they went through, to get here, they went through what the sociologists call the screening process of migration, which screens out the weak sisters and those who with no vision or purpose or courage. And those who come here are a select group rather than a cross-section of the American people. Now, I've been reading this in sociology books, and I'm observing it with Alaskans, and as an editor, I know that we have a select group here because each one is a better editor than the editor is, and he tells the editor how he should be editing. And we're all an army of generals or a population of newspaper editors or whatever it is. We know how to do it. We don't hesitate to tell the mayor how to run his affairs, or the army or the federal government or anyone else. It's a bunch of people with courage and ideas and vigor, a young population with a lot of vigor and ambitions, and they're impatient to get on with it, and they sound off freely. I say they're pioneers. They'll go into any direction they see where there's an opportunity and something good to accomplish.
It's what the truth of the matter is that the Japanese have done. All right. Once in a while you hear the complaints from, usually from the younger generation, that, is that guy coming our way before we go any further?
It's getting worse, yeah.
Do I have to say Bob Atwood again?
No. We've done all that.
You don't have this thing.
I'm going to ask you. No, we don't have to do that anymore. We've got a thing that counts it all, and it's amazing. The computer will go back to what we want, and it's great. We were talking about the pioneers and what people had to come here. Do you think there's opportunity now, or do you feel? I mean, kids feel like, well, it was easy for you to say because you were here when the opportunities were here. Do you think or do you think there's still opportunity being a pioneer?
I think there are opportunities everywhere, and you see them every day, at least I do, and there are young people stepping into it. It's a great thrill to watch them, and you be part of the act, to see them begin. There's no end to opportunities here for young people. I don't know a better place in the world for a young person to come and live, to make something of himself if he's willing to work and not proud, he'll wash dishes or anything to get started and move on as the opportunities arise and take them, and then use his vision and imagination and find an opportunity his own. It won't be falling in your lap. You have to make it, perhaps, but you can, and they do.
Give me 3 adjectives that a pioneer, to describe what a pioneer must be like.
Well, a pioneer is, I'd say, a lot of hard work and courage and determination, persistence, and I wouldn't say patience is one of his characteristics. Now, we call him a rugged individualist, but it's common among pioneers to discover they don't recognize it among themselves usually, but when something is in their way, like they need a bridge or a road or something, they just bear down on the government. You're supposed to provide that, and they need help, and they go after it. But otherwise, leave me alone. Don't regulate me. A pioneer is an interesting mixture of a whole lot of things.
Okay. The first one is used the word invention. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, that's a good trick. You did say the word adventure. What? You came to have an adventure. You think that's hold on. Use the word adventure. Has it been an adventure? Is there an adventure to be found here still?
Oh, certainly. Just think of it. I was my lucky, just luck to be better to get to the end of a runway. You can see when they're coming.
Yeah, really. Adventure. You were telling.
What do you want now in the way
I
of
was going to
adventure?
say, well, you said it's been an adventure. You were looking for adventure. Did you find it? And will other people be able to find it?
You mean personally?
Yeah. Has this been a,
Why you want me personally? I thought you were talking about the community.
Well, I want to relate them both. You said it had been an adventure.
Sure, it's an
Do you think
adventure.
there's still adventure on
It was adventure from the time I stepped off the train at 12:30 p.m., June 15th, 1935. Here I was, a owner of a newspaper. I had 5 employees. I had a print shop, and I had a daily circulation of 650. And my first challenge was, first I'm a Chichaco. So everybody's looking down their nose at this Chichaco from back east who bought their town newspaper. I wasn't accepted right away. I discovered my circulation ownership statement for the preceding year had shown 812 circulation, and now we had 650. So my first problem was, what am I going to do about that? And everybody in town told me that there aren't 812 people that can subscribe. You got them all, and there's 650. And I had never signed a false affidavit, and on October 1st I was going to have to sign something to what is our circulation. And by October 1st I had changed a few policies and changed the paper around, and the circulation was well over 812, so I had no trouble with that. I didn't have to show shrinkage to stay honest, and I could show some growth. That was a first challenge. But running a paper was quite different from being a reporter on a big paper, where you're a small cog in a big wheel. Here I was the wheel, and I was the editorial department and the advertising department, and even had to rewrite all the AP news, which came to us in telegraphese by the Army Signal Corps. It cost a cent and a half a word, so we couldn't afford many words. So they left out all articles and prepositions, and combined words in peculiar ways to make 2 words 1 word. We had our own language, like SCOTUS was the telegraphese for Supreme Court of the United States. You can see how much money we saved with that. And other names combined like that, and lots of it's been handed down and has become common in our language today, like upcoming came off of the telegraphese instead of saying coming up. and we use that it's quite common now. But anyhow, I had to rewrite, expand all these stories to make them read in good English, and then write all the local news and get the paper out and off to be delivered. And then I went out to sell the advertisements. And after I got that done, there weren't many to sell. The town was very small, 2,500 people. And then in the evening, I have to write the editorials for tomorrow and then come to work early and go to work on the next day's paper. I was never busier in my life. And I found I was in the middle of everything. I attended every city council meeting, every school board meeting, and everything that was to be covered, I had to cover. I was the staff. And I had to write it, and I had to edit it, and I had to get it in the paper, beside the whole works. And my wife, well, we agreed that we didn't want to do that, and this was fun, and it's adventure. And I was involved in city bond issues, and I didn't know anything about bonds. I remember disapproving one once, and they called the vote off. They wouldn't even hold it. And that was a big responsibility for a little editor that doesn't know anything about it. And they revamped the proposal and came to me first and said, if we propose this kind of a bond issue, will you approve of it? And I felt this responsibility no end, and I had to do quite a bit of homework to study up on bonds and decide what's good. And I was involved that way that I'd never been before, this responsibility. And then I was involved with the churches. We covered all the church news as well, and the civic clubs, and in on everything. And that's adventure. When you come from a big city where you're not in on everything, and everything's impersonal, and you're just covering the news, and you really don't get much feedback. Here, this was all intimate. We're all close together, and whatever I wrote, everybody read, and they corrected it if I was wrong, and they let me know whether they approved it or disapproved it, and it was a terrific experience. Now, you talk about adventure for a kid like me, it was great. And my wife and I agreed after we got involved here that we would stay. She says we agreed on 5 years, and I said, I recall it was 10 years. At any rate, at the end of 5 years, Hitler was on the rampage in Europe before 5 years, and Admiral Tojo was on the loose in the Pacific, and the United States became concerned about the defenses of Alaska, and we had just 200 troops in all of Alaska stationed at Chilkoot Barracks near Juneau, and they decided to defend Alaska, and we in Anchorage were great salesmen. We had a population here who wanted everything to happen. We had enormous potentials around here. The people appreciated it and wanted them used, and it took people. So we were always trying to get more people to come in here. And when the Army showed an interest in Alaska, we showed them why whatever they built in Alaska should be here. And we sold them the idea, and that's why Fort Richardson and Elmendorf are here. The people did that. They invited them and enticed them in here, wined them and dined them, and did everything for all the planning groups. And when they came, it was a great day, because that's what made Anchorage. And by this time, my wife and I were so involved in everything going on that we never talked about leaving. And she had started a PTA, and she was starting other groups in town, League of Women Voters and World Affairs Council and others. She started everything, I guess, and usually served as the first officers to run it, and then turn it over to other people, and they're still going. But she's a beginning. She's had the fun of starting all those things. So we're both involved.
You've been pioneers together.
Yeah, she was very active, and then we went through the war. And talk about adventure. This young editor who thought he was so smart he knew about bonds and all that, found he was fighting a war. And we had censorship, voluntary they called it. I say it was voluntary on a compulsory basis. In Alaska, the military more or less ruled the place. They controlled travel, they controlled shipping space on ships, You couldn't, you had to be, when we went to Seattle, we had to go through a bunch of plywood cattle chutes to channel us into, and that's the way we got treated as territorials during a war when they had all the military restrictions. There's an active war front. There were reasons for it, but they carried it entirely too far. We went through a period with them censoring our magazines and newspapers. We'd receive them in the mail with holes cut in them where there were things that we couldn't read, which made us wonder, what are we? What kind of an enemy are they? Well, they're afraid we're plotting here to throw out the United States or something. But really, there's a very loyal, devoted American population here, as anyone knows. But we had to tolerate that stuff, although we had a lot of fun griping and protesting and raising Cain. We had no representation in Congress except a delegate who had no vote, and he didn't have any. So we could just call Uncle Sam every kind of a name and object. But we lived through it, and we came out of it with a city of about, in my recollection, about 12,000 people, which was a substantial growth in a short period, during a period when we couldn't buy building materials and machinery and equipment to expand. So we're under-equipped for the whole community to support it. And we went into this. It's a challenge that could never be fully met, and you never did get your job done. And so many of us working here in Alaska in these periods never did get the job done. The market and the demands were always more than we could supply, and we just do the best we could. And we still feel that way, that this place is so big and growing and so many opportunities, we aren't beginning to touch it yet. You ask, do they still exist? Yes. This is just the beginning of what we've got here now. We've come a long way, especially when we got statehood. That opened up the door for so many other things. It lifted this low ceiling of expectations that hung over us as a territory. We're full-fledged citizens. We can vote for president. We never could before. We have 2 senators representing us, and we can be heard in Congress effectively. And before we couldn't. We were taxed without representation. We had all these situations where we were treated as colonials. Now we're free of that. And it's because we went through all these experiences and fought for it, and we did it. And it's the people of Alaska who did it. It wasn't somebody from outside doing it for us. It had to be generated here. It had to be pushed by Alaskans and won. And they had to convince Congress that making Alaska a state would be good for the nation. In Alaska, the question was, would it be good for Alaska? And we spent all our time talking about what it would do for us. But in Congress, they didn't care what it would do for us. They want to know what it would do for the nation. And Alaskans had to show them that we could be a real benefit to the nation, and we made all sorts of promises. And just think of it, in the first 25 years, Alaska has supplied 1 member of the president's cabinet already. From this little tiny population in Alaska, a member of the cabinet for the whole nation. And we have provided a senator who is in the power structure and in a leader of the most powerful deliberative body in the world out of this little population. And we also provided an ambassador who was so successful as an ambassador, the president took him off and put him in charge of Central America, which was then the hottest spot for diplomacy, and it's been one of the most successful ventures of the Reagan administration where he was in charge. Now, we've done well, and we can be proud. And you say, is the spirit of adventure still here? I say it's all over the place.
Well, I may not be much of an interviewer, but you're a pretty good interviewee.